All right. Good morning, all. Excited to see so many of us on this morning. And I'm sure that there are some new friends who were unable to join us last month when we met. If you are a new friend, my name is Rusty Anderson. I work alongside Jess, Sonia, and Trish on the MAISA Early Math team, leading some of this work across the state of Michigan. We're excited to have you here. We also have Allison, who will support us in the learning just like last month. Allison, you'll give us a wave now. Yep, see. Good to see you, Allison. She'll be jumping in here in just a little bit as well. We are going to start this meeting like we will every single month with our routine. And that routine is really, really important because it gives us a chance to hear from you all how the work is going in your local context, whether that be ISD or local district level. The QR code on the screen and or the bit.ly just below that will take you to the form. And this will, like I said, be a routine at the start of every single meeting that we have. This information is super helpful. Know that we take this feedback and design the work that we're going to do next month based off of what you all say during this form. So know that your feedback is used to inform next steps. One thing about the form that you'll become more and more comfortable with is it is intended to be a reflection on how the last month of the work has gone. So if you kind of think through the lens of what have we done in the last month? What are the celebrations? What are obstacles we're running into? Be super honest. We take your feedback, and the more honest you are in that feedback, the more we can design things that support the obstacles we're running into. As always, everyone on the call will complete the form. And then once you do, you're going to click breakouts. We'll get used to this as well. We cascade fill the breakouts to about 3 people. So as soon as you hit submit on the form, go to your breakouts and go to the first room with less than 3 people. So once room 1 has 3, then we'll start filling room 2, room 3, room 4, and so on. Again, this will just become a routine for us and super simple way to start our conversation. We're going to give you all time and space. Once you've hit submit on the form, jump into one of the breakout rooms. Enjoy the next bit of time where you're able to reflect on the great work you're doing. Friends that you may not have had an opportunity to meet before. The purpose of our time every single month when we meet and in between meetings is on the screen. It's simply to bring leaders across the state of Michigan together to learn, network, and collaborate. We're going to continue to live into those 3 words specifically in the time that we have together today. On the screen, you see an image that Allison put in front of us last time that centers our learning around 4 main chunks. Today, we're going to continue the conversation around each of those 4, but we're going to dive specifically into 3 of those things. The importance of these 4 things together is that leaders also need to learn in these 4 areas. A trap that we often fall into in learning is we provide leaders specific leader learning, teachers specific teacher learning, and those 2 things often are left in silos. We know that it's important for our leaders, our teachers, to be engaged in similar learning across roles. And that's the purpose of our time. Here are the things that we're going to specifically dive into in our time together this morning. We are going to start our time together thinking about actually teaching and learning mathematics. And we're going to do a little math because math is super cool. We're going to take that experience that we have doing math and connect it to the instructional goals that we are working toward in all of our contexts across Michigan. So we'll do math, and then we'll talk about what about that math instruction are we striving for in our context. We also will have a chance to think about teacher learning, and the phrase that's there is one that we will hang our hat on, that teacher learning is hard, and we'll surface some traps that we may or may not have fallen into. The last but not least is we are going to spend a little bit of time continuing to unpack and make explicit our learning systems from our context and what we might want to do or refine to make those a little bit better, specifically through the lens of roles, events, tools, and routines. These things are how we're going to spend our time together this morning. And we're going to do that through the agenda. You'll see easy connections through those. We're currently in the introduction and reflection. Next up, we'll get into our instructional goals where we'll do some math. Allison then will lead us in thinking about and talking about teacher learning and systems that support it. And then at the end of our time together, we'll just kind of surface a couple of topics that you all are going to be running into in the month of October through the work that we have happening through the Math Leader Network. This is our agenda. There's something here for everyone, and we're going to go ahead and dive right in. The way that we're going to dive in is to do math. Before we do that, though, I think it's important for all of us to be aware that the chat, as you're already using it, is super helpful to post questions, hopes, needs. I'm also going to continue to nudge us to unmute and put our voice in the room. Know that that is going to be really helpful both during the do math portion, but also through the other spots as well. Part of our goals of this group is to become a group who knows one another, to steal ideas from one another. And in order to do that, unmuting and putting our ideas on the table will be really, really helpful. So know that chat is helpful. Feel free to unmute. We'd love to hear your voice. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. The way that we're going to dive in is we're going to do some math. Like I said earlier, math is super fun, and we're going to have a chance to start our conversation in that way. The way that we're going to do it is we are going to see a dot image show up on the screen. Our role will be to identify the number of dots that you see. So the math question that we're going to answer is, how many dots do you see? What we're going to do with that is, once we have enough time to think about one way to solve how many dots there are, we'll post some numbers in chat. I'll prompt us to do that in a little bit. If you find one way to count the dots quickly, I think we'll be encouraged to find other ways. So if I come up with one way to count them, I'm going to continue to search for other ways to count the dots that are on the screen. Summarizing quickly, dots will show up. How many dots do we see? I'll prompt us to put how many dots we see in chat at a specific time. So have some fun. Here is the image. We'll just do some individual think time. How many dots do you see?
Seven 49.
You all are in. There are many different responses populating in chat, which is lovely. Not only the total number of dots someone might see, but also some of their thinking about how they counted those dots, which is what we're going to dive into now. The way we're going to do that is we will unmute and share some of our thinking about how we counted those dots. The way that we'll do that is invite someone to be brave and willing to share their thinking, who might be willing to unmute and share how they counted the dots.
I can share.
All right, Holly, get us started.
So I just counted the dots like vertically and then horizontally, and I did multiplication and then just kept adding 2 on to get 57.
Holly, can you say a little bit more about when you counted horizontally and vertically?
Like I counted how many dots down and then
Okay.
how many I did the columns or the rows, then kind of the columns, and I just multiplied. And then I took the other dots that were not included and just counted by 2.
Okay, Holly, can you say a little bit more about how many rows and columns you identified?
So I was 7 and 7, and then I just added 2 on. So went to 49, 51, up to 57.
Holly, I think I represented your thinking incorrectly first. You said
Okay.
7. Can you say a little bit more? I have the 1 7 in the rows, but can you say a little bit more about that other 7? I'm not seeing the other 7 yet.
Well, 7 down and then 7 across. So I just multiplied 7 times 7 to get 49. And then I took the leftover ones that weren't included and I just counted by 2.
It's really messy writing, Holly, but I think I might have it. I see
Okay.
a 7 by 7 array,
Yeah.
which you multiplied 7 by 7 to get to 49. And then you found groups of 2 off
Yeah.
to the right. And then what did you do from there from 49?
I just added 2 onto 49 and then got 51. Then I added 2 onto that and got 53. Then I 2 onto that, got 57. Or, sorry, 55, and then 2 more to 57. And I was a high school English teacher. That was tough for me.
Holly, high school English teachers are the best mathematicians that we know. Thank you so much for sharing your thinking. Let's collect another way someone thought about it. I'm sure that there are other ways to count these dots. Who else might be willing to offer a way that they counted the dots?
I can
That
share.
differently, Rusty.
I think we had 2. I wasn't sure who was first. Feel free to jump in.
Okay, I was one. First of all, kudos to Holly. Yay, Holly. I did something similar but yet opposite. I imagined that the entire array was filled in. So I did a 7 times 9 or 7 by 9 and got 63. And then I subtracted out the 6 that weren't there.
All right, I think I'm hearing you looked at the full array and noticed there were 7 rows and 9 columns, and you said 7 times 9 was
63.
63. And can you continue from there?
And then I subtracted from that. I noticed there are 6 that are missing from the 7 by 9 arrays because there are 2, 2, and 2 missing. So, or it actually, I looked at it as like a mini array within the array that was missing, a 3 by 2. So I subtracted 63 minus 6 and I got 57.
Thanks so much, Chris. Everybody take a look at what Chris was able to do.
I have a question for Chris.
Go ahead, Twin.
Hi,
Good to
Twin.
hear your voice.
So I did the same thing you did,
Mhm.
but how did you count all those dots? 9, all the 9s and all the 7s. What strategy did you use to count all your 7s and 9s?
Good question. I'll be really honest, since they left the array up for enough time, I first just counted straight across the top, and then I took my mouse and pointed at each one to make sure I had it right, because at first I thought, oh, it's 10, but I thought, oh, I better see. It was 9. And then going down, this might sound really funny, but I did it to do it more quickly. I did the 4 on the right side, and then I scooted my little mouse or my eyes in, and I did the 3 drop down. So I got to 7 quickly instead of counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's good. Thank you. That's how I did the 7, but the 9 was a little struggle, so I had to play around with it a little bit because there was just too many dots to be counted. I was just curious. Thank you.
Good question, though.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris and Twin, for sharing. Let's just take one quick look at the two strategies that we have. Obviously, there are many more that are living in our space, which is lovely. But because of time, we're just going to take a look at the two that we have. I'm going to do my best to put them next to each other. And let's just take a second to think about what connections might we make between these two strategies. How are these two strategies the same? How might they be different? Think about that for just a second, and then we'll just collect maybe one or two responses from our friends. How are these the same? How are they different? Who might be willing to offer something about how
Right.
these two might be the same or different?
Okay, Rusty, can I just connect something real quick between Holly's and Chris's strategy?
I dare you, Twin.
This is amazing. I saw somebody posted something like, wow, I figured out another way to count. And I'm like, yeah, me too. So Holly did the 7 by 7. I'm like, what? Yeah, of course. If that's 7 to make it a whole box, or it would have been 7. So Chris, I should have just cut that off and say 7 plus 2, that's 9. Wow, what a great idea. So anyway, that was my connection.
Twin, you're surfacing for us that by hearing other people's thinking, we are able to build upon our thinking. We're able to actually learn from the peers in our group, which I think, stepping out of this as like teacher or facilitator, that's what also happens in the classroom when we offer kids the opportunity to share their thoughts. And so what we'll do next, just for a quick, efficient time, and I think Trish, instead of going to breakout rooms, we'll just give ourselves a minute to reflect on the question that will show up on the slide here in just a second. And then we'll offer a couple thoughts. Here come the slides. So stepping out of the actual doing math part of this, and let's think about how that math experience might connect to either the image that you see on the screen, which I'm going to fix. There it is. The image on the screen is a focus for us as we do this work across Michigan and what we hope to see happening in classrooms. So as you think about the experience we just had, what connections might you make? And if you want to open it up just a little bit more than that, or make it an easier on-ramp for you as you think about this, just what stands out to you about the type of mathematics that we just experienced in comparison to the type of mathematics that we have happening in classrooms across the state? Just a quick opportunity to reflect, and feel free to put a thought in chat. When you're ready, type a connection you're making or just something that stands out to you in chat. We are typing things. I'm going to invite Trish, Jess, or Sonia, or Allison to name some of the patterns that we might see here in just a second.
Christy named it up above, and then I see it in a bunch of these responses, this idea of how writing expressions to represent concrete strategies that come from kids about a concrete image can help us really support kids to make sense of mathematical expressions and all the different notation we use in a way that we often don't give kids access to if we're just working with numbers by themselves.
I'll add multiple people named that there was access for everyone, lots of different ways to enter the problem. And then I think Carrie named that there were many right ways.
Another one that stood up to me, it's somewhere in all of the great comments, was the idea of individual think time first and an opportunity to solve or think about the problem in a way that made sense to you before we told you or invited other people in to share how they saw it. And then we were able, like Twin was offering for us, able to make connections or even add on to our own thinking from what or how we started the problem. So we're going to continue this conversation and think about teacher learning. And this will be kind of a foundational experience for us that will probably come back many, many different times as we're talking about teacher learning and teaching and learning mathematics. I'm going to kick it to Allison. And Allison, would you like to share or would you like me to keep going?
I would love to share.
Okay, let's do that transition for all of us. And I'll introduce Allison while she's bringing it up. If you're new here this month because you were unable to make it last month, Allison is one of our research BFFs who supports us in thinking about systems level work and systems change. Allison works in multiple contexts across the United States and spends a lot of time with us. It's a gift, it's a privilege, and we'll let Allison take it away.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. It was so fun last month. And as someone, as Rusty said, I do work in districts across the country, but this work is the most special work for me because I live in Michigan and my kiddo goes to Michigan schools. And so I love getting to think with you all about the work that we can do in this state. We talked a little bit last time about these bigger shifts, and these are just some of them. I want to emphasize there's many other ones. These big shifts we're trying to support in our classrooms. These are deeply grounded in research on what supports kids to be really powerful problem solvers and mathematical thinkers in ways that are flexible, in ways that allow them to apply it to their real lives, in ways that are joyful and actually fun. And just to bring those ideas forward and ground ourselves as we move into thinking about how we design systems to support these shifts. I'm wondering if we can put in the chat what new way, based on this experience we just had, we just experienced some instruction that I think based on our previous chat responses reflect this right side in different ways. So what new ideas or questions do you have about how teachers might engage in these shifts? Let's see what people think. We just experienced some instruction. Right, so Megan's thinking about it's going to really take some time to be able to talk with your colleagues and make sense of these shifts. What else might be hard for teachers? What else might it take for teachers to really engage in these really pretty significant shifts in how we teach math? I like that, Heather. Grace from admin to try new things. It can be really tricky. I see Jenny saying it can be really tricky to understand what to ask, right? Rusty's had a lot of practice with this. He has a lot of questions and follow-up prompts in his toolbox to apply really flexibly. That's not, if it's this way of teaching is new to me, that's not going to be something I have to readily draw on. Yep, noticing and valuing student sense making is going to be a really core piece of being able to make these shifts. So again, as Rusty showed that, we need to have a name of it. The 4 pieces coming together of the things we're trying to learn together. We have to kind of put on different hats as leaders. We had a hat on as, let's just experience this as kids, as learners, and think about the teaching. And now we're putting on this teacher learning hat. What does this help us think about supporting teachers as learners? And where we're going to use this to help us think about is this big idea that centers all of our work. That if we want this kind of learning for kids, we have to design more powerful learning for educators. So if we want kids learning to be different, we really have to think about how educator learning has to be different too. And that's for teachers and it's for leaders. So we're going to think about this trap today. And for those of you who might be new to traps, it'd be great if someone could put the design cards in the chat if you have that link. Traps are a way for us to name common recipes or ways of thinking about solving educational challenges that we just fall into over and over and over again. So there's a few that we work on in the early math world, and you can see them if you click into those design cards there, which is a core tool we've developed to really ground our thinking. And you'll see that we're connecting to those design cards. This is the work we're going to be doing today is connected to the kind of teal card and the blue card, if you're following along. But this trap we're going to focus on today is this idea if we deliver and explain high quality resources and one-off experiences, change will just magically happen. So this is a trap because it's something that we do over and over again in our education systems. It's the recipe for how we solve problems. It's not about any of us doing anything wrong. It's just the way our systems work, right? So let's think about some examples. Often it's framed in this way of someone doesn't have something, so we're going to just deliver the perfect thing and then they're going to have it, right? And some of you may have seen these examples before. In a moment, we're going to surface in the chat other examples that are coming to mind. So see what comes up for you. So for kids, we do this, right? Oh, we're just going to deliver a new instructional activity and then they're going to have it. Perfect. Or we're going to show them the algorithm or strategy and then they're going to have it. They didn't know how to add fractions. Now they know. For teachers, we do it too, right? The instruction's not working. We're just going to give them a new curriculum. Then they're going to magically teach differently. Or we're going to have this perfect 90-minute PD. It's going to be so carefully planned. The slides are going to be beautiful. We're even going to have some like ways for them to interact and plan for what they're going to do tomorrow. We're going to do all the things right in our 90-minute PD. And then teaching is going to transform in classrooms. We're going to do a book study. That'll fix it. Again, none of these things are bad. It's that if we think these in isolation, they're going to change anything. I think we can all reflect on how they don't. Okay, maybe it's just, I'm going to do a really good coaching cycle. I'm going to follow all the best practices for coaching. That's going to change what a teacher is doing, just that one cycle. I see some people nodding. Okay, we do this with leaders too. See if any of this feels familiar and how maybe you have experienced supports for your own practice. We're going to give leaders just a really good 90-minute PD, or maybe we're going to revise that email 10 times so it's perfect and really explains what we need to do. Or this is a common one, right? Oh, if we need to help leaders do something better, we're just going to give them a checklist for what to look for in classrooms. It's going to be a really good checklist. Might even be based on research, but that's going to change everything that's happening. All right, so those are just some examples. Sometimes I find that when people see those examples, they kind of want to vent a little bit. So what examples came to mind? Let's just get them out of our system. Let's put them in the chat. Can be for any level of learners in educational systems. What other examples of this like magic one-off things are going to change everything do we have? We give people a little bit of PD at the beginning of the year so they know how to use a new curriculum the rest of the year. That's all you need. What other examples come to mind? Planning one great lesson, moving on to the next great lesson. I think we also do this with evaluative conversations, right? Oh, I gave you really good feedback after that observation. So now you're going to know what to do differently every single time. Right. I love that. We're just going to set the right goal. Or sometimes it's really small things like, oh, if we just get teachers to write the target on the board, that will change instruction. All right, so we could keep going. And probably what happens often is now that we've named this trap, you might start seeing it around you. That's actually the first step. We can't always control this. It's the way the system pushes us to fall into this trap. But just see in the next month, do you notice moments where your colleagues or yourself or the system around you is pushing you or falling into this trap of trying to have one thing fix everything? Yeah, Kate, I've been thinking about this because my son came home the other day, he's in first grade, and he said, I don't know what we're doing in literacy. She said the target was mirrors. I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, I don't know. So it's this example of we write targets on the board and we say them out loud even, but they make no sense. All right. So here's how learning might actually unfold if we really think about it. It doesn't happen like this straight line, right? Magic thing. We've come to in this early math community use this. Some people have started calling it the squiggle, which I love. This more squiggly arrow. Okay. That's actually also very simplified, right? Really learning looks like some of these things. It's squiggly, sometimes it goes forward and then immediately backwards again. We've all seen that one. We've all been in that one. It looks like some mess of these, depending on who it is and what's happening. But the point is, it is not a smooth straight line. It is a messy up and down, sometimes backwards, sometimes forwards. For the sake of just having a representation, we've been using this one. But whenever you see this, I want you to think, oh, it's even messier than that. So the question is, if learning happens like this, then how do we support it? So this is going to move into our systems piece of the morning. So some of you have maybe engaged with this framework before. If you're following along in your design cards, it's the blue cards. What this framework helps us do is say, what are all the parts of a system that support learning over time that we have to design for and think about? So one starting point is to think about roles, events, routines, and tools. So roles are who are the people supporting learning and how are they enacting their roles? There are 10,000 ways to be a principal. So it's not just saying there's a principal, it's how is the principal engaging with the teacher? Or it's not just that there's a coach, there's 10,000 ways to be a coach also. How is the coach enacting their role? That's what we think about when we think about roles. With events, we think about both planned events, so that might be a meeting or a professional learning event. Incidental events matter too. What's that conversation you have in the hallway? What's that conversation having at lunch? What's the 2-sentence thing you say as you walk in to give something to a teacher in the classroom? So all of those add up to how a teacher is experiencing their learning system. There's also tools in our systems. They can be both tangible tools and conceptual tools. So to be concrete about that, a tangible tool would be something like, here I just gave you a piece of paper that names a thinking trap. I gave you a piece of paper. Once that thinking trap becomes something I'm just thinking about in my head, or I can say, ooh, I fell into a trap, then it becomes a conceptual tool. It's a tool that kind of lives in our minds and doesn't necessarily have to be on a piece of paper. Both of those things are alive in our systems. Routines are these kind of common repeatable patterns of interaction. So that may be, these are the steps we do when we do a data analysis protocol. Or these are the steps we do when we do observation cycles. Or At the end of every PD, we do an exit ticket, or Rusty just walked us through a routine earlier, right? That we're doing at the beginning of every one of these sessions where we reflect and then we jump into a breakout group. That's another example of a routine. I want to emphasize that, and I'll show, we'll keep talking about this, but these are categories that help us, but they really overlap a lot, right? Nothing necessarily falls exactly in one of these. Often they kind of overlap, like we might use a routine, like we did this morning, in an event that uses a tool such as a Google form, okay? So they're overlapping. Here's an example when we think about kids. When we think about classrooms as a system for learning, we have to think about the role of students and teachers and instructional leaders. We have to think about the events like lessons or the little conversations teachers have as they're walking around. We have to think about the routines that teachers are building in, whether it's a discussion routine or a routine for interaction, like how do I conference with kids, or how do I have a small group at my table while other kids are doing something else. And then we also think about the tools in our classroom. I think that's a concrete way for us to think about, oh yeah, learning supported actually by the interaction of all of those things, not just one of them. We can think about it with teachers too, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So this is just a snippet of how we might think about roles, events, routines, and tools in relation to the systems that support teachers. We can think about leaders too. All of these kinds of things are around you in your role, or if you support other leaders, around them and their roles that really shape how they engage in their practice and what kinds of things they learn or don't learn, or how they're supported along their messy squiggle line of learning. So again, like I said before, often these are really connected, right? Within an event. So think about today, this is an event. The way that Rusty enacted his role, or I'm enacting my role, that's part of the roles. There's tools that we're using like slides or the chat. There's routines that we're doing like we just talked about, that they go all together, but it's useful to use this framework to kind of jog our thinking about what else is alive in our system. And here's what the reality is. When someone's moving along their squiggle, or if we have a team of teachers moving along their squiggle, or ourselves, we're moving along our own squiggles, it's really the events and tools and routines and roles over time and how they interact that are going to support us to move along our squiggle. But of course, if we really think about it, that's only the beginning of it, right? It also matters what inquiry community I'm a part of, or what the culture of my school or district is. So that might mean, what is the culture of risk-taking in my school? Do people trust each other? What are the norms for talking about teaching? How do we work together? How do we respond to mistakes? Can I go, as we were seeing in the chat, like I need to be able to reflect with my colleagues about what's going on if I'm trying to make these complex shifts? Can I do that? I've worked in schools where I could, and I've worked in schools where I definitely could not. And I'm guessing you all have too. Okay, so around all these tools and routines and roles and events, what the culture and norms around me are going to matter for how I engage in them. And then we cannot set aside all of these other layers of the broader context. Teachers are not immune from any of these other layers. All of these layers come right into the school building, right? Society has views of teaching. Federal policy really impacts us. State policy, as we're finding out this week in Michigan, really impacts us. There's lots of things around us that matter for how we're experiencing that PD on a Friday, or how we're experiencing that interaction with a coach. All of these things are part of it. So what this helps us think about is, how are we designing, or at least thinking about this whole system as we're trying to support teachers to make shifts rather than just little isolated pieces of it? So last week, what we did is last month, feels like last week, we mapped out the messiness of our current systems. So we thought in ISD groups, we thought, what is everything a teacher might experience or come in contact with or need to make sense of this coming year? And we ended up with these messy piles of Post-its in Canva. And that was just an initial, one of my colleagues talks about it as throat clearing. Like, how can we just get out some initial ideas? And then what we're going to do over the next few months together is refine that and dig deeper. So this framework we just thought about here is a way to help us dig deeper and think about what did we think about in our system and what did we not think about yet. So that's what we're going to do today for the first little bit of team time is we're going to look at our Canvas from last time. And we're going to add some more Post-its. We're going to think about what's missing in our messy systems maps. So Trish just put in the chat, I'm going to see if I can pull this over into my screen share. She just put in the chat where we can find maybe our Canvas. And I'll just click into one just to show you quickly. If I click into Oakland, for instance, thanks Oakland for letting me share yours. What we can do here is look back at our first slide still. Later we'll work in the second slide, don't get there yet. We're going to work in the first slide and think about, based on this idea of roles, events, tools, routines, inquiry, community, and norms and culture, and all the layers of state and federal and district and ISD and community context. What did we forget last time? What would we add if we were thinking about what's everything a teacher will come in contact with this year? So that's going to be our first little our ISD team task. And I'm trying to find, I can't get all my screens lined up here. We're going to have, I think, 15 minutes. Is that right? Team? I think that's right. Are there any questions about what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes?
Elsie, we're going to go to breakouts with our region team. Is that correct?
Yes. So our region teams, I'm going to put it in the chat. What would we add to our teacher experiences? And I'll put in the chat too. So it's roles, events, routines, tools, inquiry, community, norms, culture. Okay. See what you would add.
We're working on the breakout rooms. Feel free right now while we're getting those set to click on your Canva based on the ISD that you are in. Once the breakout rooms are ready to go and populate, Trish is working on those right now. You'll choose the breakout room that aligns with your number from that document that just went into chat. So if I am Copper Country region, I would click into breakout room 13, since 13 is next to Copper Country. So bear with us just for a second while we get these ready to roll. It looks like breakout rooms are now open. If you are wondering where to find those, at the bottom, you probably see breakout rooms in your options on Zoom. If it's hidden, you may need to click the More button, which is the furthest button to the right, and breakout rooms will be hidden in there somewhere. We're happy to help you get to the place you need to go. If you just put a thing in chat, we can help push you into a breakout room. Nicely push you into a breakout room.
Conversation keep having in the next few weeks. Hopefully we're seeding some ideas of, ooh, if we kept working on this, we might get somewhere. We put in the chat one Post-it that you added. We put in the chat one Post-it that you added in your groups. And you hopefully still have your Canva open. If you see something in the chat that yours does not have yet, but maybe should, this is where we can get good ideas from our colleagues. So I see Andrea put in monthly PLCs. Do you have that on yours? Kelsey's point here is super important. Teachers also bring their own personal experiences and personal lives to their work. Community events and implications taking focus. If that feels like it rings true for your context too, and it's not there yet, drop it in. Alyssa, if this, having so many initiatives, it's hard to know what to focus on. If that's not on yours, I would be, and should not be, I would be shocked. So if that's not there yet, add it.
Sanilac and Oakland both named communication with the community or with families.
Great. Okay. The point here with this post-it messy system activity is to help us zoom out a little bit to think about what is everything that teachers are experiencing, so that when we design any one piece of that system, we're also thinking about how might that part of the system fit in with everything else or not. We're going to keep working on these post-it systems over the next few months and learn together about how we can create more coherence across them, how we can be more intentional about the ways that these different pieces relate to each other, how we can learn about the pieces that we maybe don't know that much about so that we can be better at supporting our teachers in their context. So what we're going to do now is actually do some thinking together. So I'm going to put it in the chat. And then I'm going to share my screen to give us a little orientation of what we're going to do together. So the question we're going to think about together is, how does our system, or how do our systems, I guess, how do our systems currently support or impede, it's important, our envisioned shifts in math teaching and learning? And then we can also think about what would we change. So here I've put the shifts, and then you'll see the table below. The columns are the different layers of the system that we were thinking about. And then the rows are 3 different lenses you may take. So how does our system currently support this? Support these shifts? How is our system actually impeding it? And maybe you're starting to get ideas for things you might redesign. Those can get dropped into. We're all going to write in the same place. I'm going to challenge everyone to write at least one thing. Let's see if we can reflect on our systems together through this lens. Don't get too hung up on where something goes. Again, the point is not which column does it go in, but what do these columns help me think about? So I'll even add a column farther on the right of other. If you're not sure where to put it, just put it over in other. Stop sharing so that you have more space on your screens. added one thing, try to add another thing. Reading other people's ideas might give you ideas. At least one person isn't able to type, which is an issue because you're supposed to have up to 100 people in here. So if you're having a hard time adding ideas, put them in the chat and we'll get them in there for you. All right, maybe if everyone can add one more idea. And then take a moment to zoom out and look across. And I would love folks to unmute or put in the chat what's coming up for you. What are you noticing? What are you wondering? Rusty has bonus points available if you unmute. Jenny's noticing something in basically every box.
I can share something.
Great.
So I think for me personally, it's kind of easy for me to focus on ways that our system impedes shifts, but I'm trying to have an asset base this year. So like I intentionally stayed away from that row, but as I zoom out and look like that category probably does have more input than the other two, but not a lot more than the ways our system currently supports the shifts. So I'm happy to see that. And we actually have quite a bit in ways we could redesign our system.
We have good ideas, is what I would say. What else are people noticing?
I'm noticing an emphasis on teacher support, not the roles who support teachers, which I know is what this whole project is really all about, right? Like getting the support to the teachers. But I see a lot of people mentioning things that are directly impactful of teachers, and that's a significant change and a redesign that I think we're in the middle of.
I love that, Kelsey. So if you have any thoughts about that, keep typing in. What would we add in ways that either currently support or impede, or we could redesign related to leader learning and practice is what I hear Kelsey pushing us to think about. So this might be a moment to move into that impede place and think about what about the system actually keeps you from doing the work you wish you could do? Or what are you noticing about this new work we're doing that really actually is supporting you to do different kinds of work? Other noticings, wonderings. Anyone else want some bonus points?
I always really want bonus points, so I'm gonna have to. One of the parts I think that was really exciting for me when I look across the top column is how much of this like we're getting to do on this journey together. So like this idea that like we're each doing this in our own context, but then also we have all of these shared pieces that we get to learn and be together to do.
I just tried to add that in the far column, Sarah. So we get to do all of this to the left together, is what I hear you saying. "13 points. Wow, Sarah. All right. Any other noticings or wonderings here?
I just saw somebody add, and they're typing it right now, things keep getting added, but nothing is taken away.
That's huge. So if you're looking for a little extension activity with your Post-its, an interesting thing to do is to move them around a bit and say, what do we have to keep? What could we let go of? All right. We're going to pause this conversation right now, but I would invite you to think about, and we'll make sure this gets out in the email and you have access to this. I would invite you to think about how this might be a useful table that we just created together to talk about further in your local teams, or think about who else in your system might actually, would you want to show this to, and just see what conversation it sparks. This lens of how is our system currently supporting what we want or not, and what could we do differently, is the conversation we need to keep practicing having in our systems, so that we can start to see our systems in the same way and start to think about how we can redesign them, which is going to be our work together over the next few months, but also can be your work in your local contexts. All right, am I passing it to you, Rusty?
Yes, that sounds great. We are going to transition to the next part and the last part of our agenda, which is the action. And the purpose of this time is for us to just highlight some of the things that you all are going to be doing in your context through the work that's happening with the math leaders for all of the pathways that we have happening across the state. I'm going to share my screen and show us where we find some of these things, because that's an important chunk for all of us. And then I'll highlight a couple of specifics. So like we shared in the first meeting, and we'll share again, that if you're looking for anything that connects to all of this work, you go to mathessentials.org and click on the tab to the top right, which is landing pages. Once you get there, you'll be able to click Early Math System 2526, which will take you to this Canva, which has all the stuff that we might run into. The meeting that we are in right now is the Systems Leader Network meeting. You can access the slides, you can access the resources that are connected to this meeting specifically, and all of these other circles and shapes have links to all the other things that are happening out there. One that I'm going to highlight for us is all of us in the K-5 world are going to have a leadership team meeting again this month. Those will happen monthly in the system, and a lot of the things that we just worked on are going to continue to show up in those leadership team meeting agendas. If you're ever curious about what the agenda looks and sounds like, if you might be not on that team, or you're at the ISD level and you don't venture into the leadership team for the local level, you can click agendas on the local leadership team and it will take you to the agenda along with all the resources for it. I'll go back to the slides and highlight just a couple things for us. In the month of October, there are specific leadership things that are going to be happening. I just mentioned the local district leadership team. Many of you are a part of that and or facilitate it. If you are not a part, if you're an ISD role and want to be, send an email and see if it'd be okay for you to join one. I think the learning and the work there can be really beneficial for all of us to be informed of, but also a part of. Know that in the leadership team, we are going to collect artifacts, and those are going to be specific to classroom visits. There's new learning around classroom visits in the agenda and an opportunity to collect artifacts. That's for our K-5 world. Another thing that's happening this month when it comes to leadership activities is we are starting, if we haven't yet, the process of learning labs in our context, both in pre-K and in K-5. There are a ton of resources that have been shared with math leaders on getting started with learning labs. We know it's going to be messy. We know it's going to be complex and we're going to make mistakes. I think the big thing though is for us to get messy and to try some things in classroom with kids to see what we can learn. Know that those two things are big chunks of leadership activities that are happening in the month of October. As I said, all of these resources can be found on the landing page from mathessentials.org. That is the update on October. If anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to hang on to the meeting. We'll hang out here for just a minute to see how we can support, if any way that would be helpful. For those of you who are ready to head to the next part of your day, we appreciate you joining. We hope that you have a great Thursday and rest of the week, and don't hesitate to reach out if anything pops up. Have a great rest of the week.